empowerment, a fair, a smart state, just economy, and well, www.voltseuropa.org, or in the UK, voltsuk.org. I am very pleased to be an activist for the first time in my life in this movement. And well, it's exciting to influence Brussels. We have a person in the European Parliament in Strasbourg. He's from Germany and doing a lot on the Lesbos Island migration disaster. So yeah, we try to be effective.
Okay, yeah, effective is good. So we've had a few more people join us. So welcome, Jill.
Hi, oops, sorry. Hi, I'm just going to get myself some water. I forgot.
That sounds like a very good idea. I've got myself a little glass of milk. And Alec, welcome.
Hi.
Again. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you, David.
People are slowly.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Hi.
Oh,
And Chris, welcome, Chris. A few faces here I recognize and remember. Oh, it's two Chris's, sorry. Okay, so Chris and Chris. Welcome. And Jan, okay. Is that Jan?
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
hi.
Hi.
I was just taking a look earlier. What have we got? Yes, 12 different countries. We've got people, we can have about 30 people if they all join us from 12 different countries, from New Delhi to San Francisco.
Wow, that's impressive.
Wow.
Well done, David.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure who's joining from San Francisco, but it's got to be like 5 o'clock on the west coast of America. So
I'm on the West Coast. I'm in Portland, Oregon, just
Yeah,
up from
Portland,
San
that's-
Francisco.
so what time is it there?
It is 6 a.m.
Okay, it's not so
Wow.
early, but it's early.
But I thought, what a wonderful way to start my day and my weekend.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Are there ashes in the air?
Yes, but we
No.
got a big rainstorm overnight, and hopefully that will help not only the fires but the air clear. Many of you may have heard for the last many days our air has been the worst air quality in the world because of massive wildfires on the West Coast. So we're
It touches
hoping
the European
yeah.
continent even.
Yeah, it's huge. The smoke is just incredible. So
I was quite amazed because I saw the small town of Phoenix was totally burnt out.
well, that's actually Phoenix, Oregon.
Phoenix, Oregon, yes, yeah, sure, not Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah,
That's-
not Phoenix, Arizona. Some people got that mixed up. Yeah.
But I looked at Google Earth and I was surprised because it's not that densely forested.
Right.
You realize just how powerful those firestorms are.
Yes, yes.
But good to hear you're getting some rain.
Yes. Thank you all. Thank you for your warm welcome, David.
And you're very welcome. Now, who haven't I said hello to? John, welcome, John. Hey, you had a little trim there, I think.
Hey, John.
I did.
Looking good.
Thank
Who
you.
else I said hello to? Michelle. Hi, Michelle. You sure?
Hello.
Thanks, Michelle.
Which Michelle?
There are two Michelles.
we've got more than one. Sorry, I'm getting confused here. We're going to have to. So, Michelle Charles.
Yes. Hello. How are you?
And where are you based?
I'm in New Jersey in the States.
Jersey. Okay. And Michelle Leroux.
Yes, so I'm still in kind of semi-lockdown in the north of England.
Okay. Right. Yes. And
Much
maybe
more than
lockdown
semi.
for long, unfortunately. And Aman,
Hey,
welcome.
thank you very much.
Now, where are you?
I'm based in Berlin, Germany.
You're in Germany. Okay, right. Yeah. And slowly people are coming in. We're up to 17 people. I was just explaining that if everybody joins, there should be about 30 people from about 12 different countries. So quite a mix. I'm Pamela. Welcome, Pamela. Okay. And Kate. Welcome, Kate. Okay. We're doing up to 19, going strong. And is that Alan? Is it Alan Hector or Alan?
No, sorry, it's Paul.
It's Paul. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's Paul. I know you're Paul.
Sorry, no. My daughter uses my computer.
Ah,
And
your
I just need
daughter.
to.
Okay, right. Yes. Yes. Occasionally that happens. People come on and you kind of wonder what the gender is. Let me let in a few more people, and that what I'm going to do is totally disable the waiting room so people can come in. Right, we're looking good. How are we doing? 1 minute past. Okay, and Howard, I think you're in Jersey, aren't you, Howard?
I am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, yes. Okay. It sounds like a very British accent there with
We are very British, you know.
a more French sounding name, actually.
And it is. The Jersey name.
Oh, it's a Jersey name, is it?
It is, yeah.
Traditional Jersey name. Okay. I don't know too much about Jersey names. Who else haven't I said hello to? Jamie. Welcome, Jamie.
Hello.
Hello. And Gary.
Hello.
And Amy and Pamela and Thaler. Welcome, Thaler. Hey, okay. How are we doing? 24. We're looking good. Now, cross your fingers, depending whether you're religious or not, say a prayer. But this morning, my internet has been up and down all morning.
Oh.
It's holding up right now. I hope it's going to hold up for the next couple of hours. If it doesn't, I think that although I might disappear, you guys still stay there. I'm going to switch to the internet via my phone, and hopefully I'll come on, although maybe just reduce bandwidth. We will see how that works. I'm told that Zoom does cope with it reasonably well. So how are we doing? We're 2 minutes past the hour. Let's just give it a couple more minutes. And anybody have any questions or, I don't know, fun stories to tell?
I do.
Yep, okay.
Where are you based, David?
I'm in the UK. I'm in a little sleepy village called Fleet,
Mm-hmm.
about 30 miles southwest of London. That's,
And how do you prefer this to be run? Is it a facilitated session where we better mute ourselves, or is there an interactivity part?
okay. Yes, there's going to be some interactivity. There's going to be a lot of conversation. We've got about 3 hours. There's going to be a break in the middle, but so there's going to be a good 2.5 hours session, half of which is going to be conversation. And the other half is going to be me in death by PowerPoint mode, but hopefully not long enough to kill you. And hopefully interesting enough to keep you awake. But I'll explain all that in a moment. But clearly when I'm presenting, it makes good sense to mute yourselves. And then when we come back and have a conversation, just to mute and unmute yourselves as as you come to speak or not speak.
David, I'd just like to say, I have a sick child in the house, so I may have to disappear at times if he needs assistance.
Yep, no problem. Who's not familiar with Zoom? These days, everyone seems familiar with Zoom. Are you all familiar with Zoom? Wonderful. I started using Zoom probably 4 years ago, and in the past, I had to give some basic instructions to using Zoom. Today, that's not a problem, or it's a lot less of a problem. Though if you're not too familiar with it, if you move your cursor down to the bottom of the screen, up pops the ribbon menu. It makes good sense to display the participants list and the chat list to the right of the screen. And again, if you move your cursor to the top right-hand corner of the video window, you can toggle between speaker mode and gallery mode. So I think those are pretty simple and simple enough instructions. So we're up to 26 people. And Gina, you've just joined us. Hi, Gina.
Yes, good morning. Hi, well, good morning for me.
Yeah.
She's my dearest friend.
Oh, really? Okay.
She's thousands of miles away, but there she is.
Yeah, there she is.
Hi, Jill.
Yeah. Oh, that's so exciting.
Ah, and you're in San Francisco, aren't you, Katina?
Well, I'm in Palm Springs to get away from the San Francisco smoke.
Okay. So how hot is it in Palm Springs right now?
Fahrenheit, it's 110 during the afternoon. That's how bad the smoke was in the Bay Area for me to justify coming here.
Not too sure what 110 is in centigrade.
But I return tomorrow. The smoke should...
in the world that's stuck with Fahrenheit. Which, and Seema.
Hi, hello, David.
There you go, Seema. You got to join us. Welcome.
Yeah, but the thing is, my son is using my home computer, so I'm using an iPad. Okay. So I'm not in my usual setting, so I'm sitting in the living room.
That's okay.
And so I'm happy I could join you today, though.
I'm happy you could join us because we've been trying to get you along now for a little while. Okay, look, we're 6 minutes past the hour, so I think it's a good time to start. So, big welcome to you all. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to move into sort of PowerPoint mode, and in doing that, I will explain the agenda. Okay, so everyone happy? Everyone's sitting comfortably? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Excellent. Let's see what I can do. Share screen. Set. What do I want? There we go. And share. Right. There we go. We're looking good. Everyone can hear me. Everyone happy? Right. Okay. Let's kick off here. So this is the agenda. So we're running for 3 hours till about 1700 my time, at least. You can work that out for your own time zones. Session's broken into 2 halves. There can be about a 20-minute break in the middle. In the 2 halves, I'm effectively running sort of two separate knowledge cafes. So in both halves, I'm talking for about 20 minutes. Clearly to these PowerPoint slides. Got a few little video clips as well to liven things up. And then we're going to have, at the end of each session, we're going to have 2 rounds of conversation in breakout rooms. So you get to discuss some of the stuff that I've got to talk about. And then right at the very end of the session, we've got a whole group conversation that will last 30 to 40 minutes. So that's pretty much the agenda. So let me just start off with just a sort of few words of kind of context and introduction. I know most of you know me, but not all. I've been working for myself now for the last 25 years or so. And I guess what I'm best known for are my knowledge cafes, which I just realized I started running September 2002. So I've been running those for 18 years, which seems, I don't know, seems a lifetime. But the thing that I learned in that time was really the extraordinary power of conversation. I run those cafes all over the world, learned a lot about people, a lot about culture, and a lot about conversation. And that's become the focus of my work these days, you know, so much so I'm writing this so-called book, and a cross between a blog and a book on conversational leadership. And I find myself more and more, you know, teaching some of the concepts through knowledge cafes like this one. Okay, so just a little bit about me. This is worth saying right up front. Conversational leadership is John Hovell and I. John's here today. We have a lot of conversations about conversational leadership, and we realize the more we talk that it's a very broad and very deep topic. And my aim today is not to fill your minds full of stuff, but to maybe kindle some ideas, kindle some thoughts. That's the aim. Everything that I talk about is in my book. I know and I hope that most of you have taken a look at some of the material there. This is the home page. This is the URL. If you haven't taken a look yet, go take a look. And this is how a Knowledge Cafe might normally be run if we weren't doing this. If we weren't doing this virtually. This was the cafe I ran in the UK for the NHS a few years ago, and it's just almost perfect size and perfect circle here. If you take a look at my book, I'm just putting this slide up to give you a feel for the breadth of the content, if you like. But also, it's more than just a book. It's more than just about it's more than just about me. It's a lot more than just about me. I've got a lot of profiles of books, profiles of people, quotations, embedded videos, and academic papers that are all there as resources that kind of build on the conversational leadership concept. So anything or everything I talk about, you will find a lot more in my blog. Okay. So let's kick off and let's talk a little bit to the topic. I think we're probably all recognizing today that in society is increasingly polarized across many divides. I've just listed a few of them here, and it seems becoming more and more of an issue, almost by the day. And the downside of it very much is that maybe not us, I would hope not us, but so many people see others, with conflicting beliefs as enemies to be defeated, maybe only defeated intellectually, but it gets worse than that at times. Often people want to kill each other, and you've only got to look at the web to look at any conversation to realize that too often the end justifies the means. So to me, this has been a big issue for quite a while. I was looking at the web the other day and thinking about this the other day, and I was trying to find political articles written by sort of mainstream media that were well balanced and put forward constructive arguments. I couldn't find one. They were all derogatory. They were all disrespectful. It's very difficult to find anything on the web that engages in constructive argument. I mean, there are places, there are websites, there are forums where things are very constructive, but the vast majority, it's not. So it's as I say, it's an issue. So this is the question that I've struggled with for the last few years. Why is it that we're so polarized? And what I'd like to do is give my response to this. Let me suggest why I think we're polarized, and then we can have some conversation. And you can agree with me, you can disagree with me. As long as you do it respectfully, I'll be happy. And we can see where this takes us. And to me, the root of our difficulties lie our beliefs and something that is often called the knowledge illusion. And I just want to dig into this concept of the knowledge illusion, although I sometimes call it a knowledge delusion. Here's a question for you. Does the Earth orbit the Sun, or the Sun orbit the Earth? I hope that all of you believe that the Earth orbits the Sun. But it's kind of strange, isn't it? Because your everyday experience tells you it's the other way around. You see the sun rise in the east and you see it travel across the sky and set pretty much in the west. But you believe the Earth orbits the sun. How do you know that? The chances are that somebody told it to you when you were a child, a teacher, a parent. You may have read it in a book. You don't actually know that the Earth orbits the sun. You trust what somebody else has told you. And it may well be that they were somebody in authority, somebody who, an expert, somebody who knew for sure. But it could have just been, that as a child you were told that the sun orbits the Earth, and that's what you believe. So, our beliefs are more based on trust than they are on actually knowing. And here's another example closer to home. What does Greta Thunberg know about climate change? I would say diddly squat. She knows nothing about climate change. And I'm not being disrespectful to Greta Thunberg because I don't know anything about it and you don't know anything about it. Yeah. We trust, if we do believe in it, we trust the scientific community. If we don't believe in it, it seems to me that Donald Trump doesn't believe in it. He distrusts the scientific community. So again, it's a good example of where our beliefs come from. If I asked you to explain in some detail, maybe write a one-page essay on the human causes of climate change, I suspect I'd include myself in this. We'd have great difficulty in doing it in any sort of coherent way, but we believe in climate change. Some of these thoughts and ideas have come from this book, The Knowledge Illusion, written by Stephen Sloman and Philip Fernbach. They're both American cognitive scientists. I got to see Stephen give a talk in London a few years ago and bought the book. And it's this book that's had a lot of influence on me. So this was his talk. It was at the Royal Society of Arts in London. And I've just got like a 2-minute clip here of him sharing some of his thoughts on the knowledge illusion. Okay.
Turns out Americans aren't as knowledgeable as they think they are. About 25% of Americans don't know that the Earth revolves around the sun. I believe the Earth revolves around the sun and that the sun doesn't revolve around the Earth. Don't ask me how I know that, right? Because I've never perceived it directly. I sort of take it on faith, and yet I call it knowledge. And this isn't just a modern phenomenon either. So in 1943, only 25% of college freshmen knew that Abraham Lincoln was president during the Civil War. Oklahoma State did a survey, and its Department of Agricultural Economics did a survey a few years ago, and they found that over 80% of Americans support the idea that GMO, genetically modified foods, should be labeled as such. They should be labeled as produced with genetic engineering. This seems like a perfectly reasonable thing to support, until you find out that they also thought that foods containing DNA should have mandatory labels. So it makes you wonder what the thinking process was that led them to the first conclusion. Just in case you're unaware, it's hard to find foods that don't contain DNA. This feeling that we understand things better than we do has become a real problem, I think, right? And it explains the heat and vociferousness of some of the debate that we see in politics. This has been observed for years. This is a quote: "It is better to remain silent at the risk of being thought a fool than to talk and remove all doubt of it." Churchill said the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. And another of your countrymen, Bertrand Russell, pointed out that this failure of understanding is one of the causes of extremism. The opinions that are held with passion are always those for which no good ground exists. What is it about that causes them to think they understand things better than they do? The answer I'd like to suggest is that we suffer from it because we fail to distinguish what other people know from what we know. So other people understand cap and trade in carbon emissions. I may not, but the fact that other people do makes me feel like I do. It's a kind of knowledge conflation. We conflate other people's knowledge with ours. And as a result, when we're thinking about the mind, instead of thinking about it as something that happens between the ears, we should think about it as something that happens within a community, because we depend on each other's knowledge to.
Now this is the knowledge illusion, and I think it's a very, very important insight. This idea that so much of our knowledge that we think is our own, that we think we know, we don't know at all. It's in the minds of other people. Just reflect on that for a moment. Now, this is a quotation from Daniel Kahneman. He's a psychologist and economist and Nobel laureate, and this is from his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Now, for some of our most important beliefs, we have no evidence at all, except that people we love and trust hold those beliefs. And then even worse, considering how little we know, the confidence we have in our beliefs is preposterous. Yes? So there's some food for reflection here. To kind of summarizing that a little, we know far less than we do. You could say almost that we know individually almost nothing at all. As a community, as a society, we know a tremendous amount. But individually, and the stuff that we know is the stuff that we know through experience, not really the stuff that we've been taught. And our beliefs are not based on a great deal of evidence. But despite all of this, we argue and fight over our beliefs. Yeah, this is the craziness of it, if you will. And to me, recognizing the shaky ground on which our beliefs are based is the first step in not seeing people with counter beliefs as stupid, or worse still, as our enemies. Yeah, we need to actually stop and recognize how our beliefs are formed and the shakiness of them. So let's just come back to the book again. There's a second author here. We just heard from Stephen Sloman. Let's hear a few words from Philip Fernbach. And I think he puts the case much more strongly in this little video clip.
Now, the real tragedy occurs in how we relate to people who have different beliefs than us. We live in the illusion that we have arrived at our own positions via a serious analysis, and that we can support and justify what we believe based on what we know. Therefore, when someone doesn't believe what we believe, it's obvious what the problem is. They're too stupid to see the truth. And there's actually a sense in which you're right when you think that. It's true. They did not arrive at their position via a rational process of evidence evaluation. And they don't understand the issue in depth. But neither do you. Think about how we talk about a complex issue like healthcare. If you're a liberal, the Affordable Care Act is the bee's knees. If you're a conservative, it's destroying America. But most of the time, arguments about the policy's merits amount to little more than repetition of sound bites that we heard from someone else. As non-experts, we can't possibly do justice to the complexity of an issue like that. When we express our beliefs, we are all just channeling our communities of knowledge. That's what we do. Knowledge is not in my head, and it's not in your head. Knowledge is shared, and therefore, the things that you really care about, those things are shared too. Now, the point is decidedly not that people are stupid. It's true, we are all ignorant, but that's not something we should hide from. The world is far too complex for any one of us to understand much of it. What makes us special is the ability to thrive amidst that complexity by sharing knowledge. From our individual ignorance can arise collective genius. Ignorance is a feature.
I'll leave you to dwell on that. That ignorance is a feature of the human race, but in a strange sort of way. It's a benefit because each and every one of us couldn't possibly know everything. Okay, so that brings us to the end of sort of the first half, the first session here. What I want to do now is go into Knowledge Cafe mode. I'm going to come out of this presentation in a moment, split you into rooms, and we're going to have 2 rounds of conversation, 30 minutes, 30 minutes in total, 15 minutes each, okay? So those of you not familiar with the cafe, I always pose a question. This will be the question. It's a pretty straightforward one. Why are we so polarized? Why are we increasingly polarized? I've given you my thoughts on it. Some of you may agree, some of you may disagree. I may well have missed things. I'd be really interested in other viewpoints, other reasons why we argue and fight the way that we do, and why is that polarization seemingly getting broader. Okay, so the question, let's keep that question in your head. Why are we increasingly so polarized? And let me come back and stop this screen sharing and return to you. Good, you're still all there. And welcome, Helen. I see you joined us, and I think Obi, you joined us as well. So big welcome. And I was expecting, I think, 33 people in total, and there are 30 of us here. So that's not bad. So are you all familiar with breakout rooms and having chats in breakout rooms? I should think many of you are more than familiar with Zoom by now. So what I'm going to do is create some breakout rooms. Let's get breakout rooms. Right, here we go. So I'm going to put maybe 3 at the very most 4 of you in a room. So what have I got here? 3 to 4 participants per room. There are going to be 9 rooms. So I'm going to give you 15 minutes to have a conversation in the small groups. We'll come back together. I'll put you in second room and we'll have a second round of conversation. And the question is, I'll send you the question just to remind you all, but basically it's, why do you believe, why do you think that we're so increasingly polarized? Okay, so enjoy your conversations. Let's just check that this has done a reasonable job. Yeah. Okay, Chris, you're still with us. Enjoy your cup of tea. You should see an instruction there on your room, Chris. And Leslie, you still with us? Leslie, are you there? Listen. Listen.
Yeah, maybe we can hear more about it.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Everyone's still with us.
Well, there's another homework that's due for the 22nd.
Okay. There was a comment from two people that you couldn't hear me so well. And I've just bought myself a nice expensive microphone. Solved that problem. I've turned the gain off. So is anybody still having a problem hearing me?
Yes. Yeah, there's a buzz. It may not be you, of course. And we could all try and mute ourselves, or you could. I think you can
mute everybody and then talk. We can tell you
There's
whether
a
it's you.
buzz, a background hum. When you're
And when you changed the gain, it made it worse for me.
Made it worse.
Me too. Me too.
Okay. let's.
You're clear now. I think you've moved closer.
Yeah, don't touch it now.
Yeah, you're very clear now.
How's that?
That's much better.
I would say if people are getting a breakup of the audio, it's probably their bandwidth. And if they turn their video off, they might find they can hear the audio well.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Okay, so look, the plan now is we've got maybe 10, 15 minutes for a whole group conversation. We'll then break for 15 to 20 minutes for a tea break, coffee break, stretch your legs. And they're here in the UK, it's a beautiful sunny day. And then we'll go into the second half of the session where I want to talk a little more about maybe a response to all of this. And then we got a good 30, 40 minutes right at the end for the whole group conversation again. So the essence of this whole group conversation, it's not quite so easy to do it when we've got, what, 27 people now. So what I say to people is that it's not just about me, if you like, facilitating it. It's about you guys having a conversation. So if somebody is having difficulty coming into the conversation, if you wave your hand or you use Zoom to put up your little virtual hand, if I don't see it, if somebody else can pick up on it and say, David, I think Obi is trying to get in. Obi wants to say something. Then I will pick up on it. So if we all take responsibility for the conversation, it works a whole lot better. Because it's difficult like this. Typically in a large group, you have a series of people reporting back, and I'm trying to get away from that reporting back, so that if somebody says something and somebody wants to build on it, or somebody disagrees, then they can come in and do that. It's not so easy in Zoom, but it is possible at times. So anyway, I'll stop there and simply say, who would like to start the conversation?
Lucy wants to.
Sure, I'll jump in.
Okay, Lucy, okay.
I noticed at the end of our second breakout session that, like my therapist friends say, people always have something to say in the last minute, right? When it's time to leave, right? So there was a really interesting question that arose just in the last literally 35 seconds before the breakout ended. And it was that in this time of polarization, this was somebody else from the States that was asking she wanted to know, she says, every time I see a Trump sign, I take it very personally and I get very upset. And how do I stop that? And then, like, we took a breath and there wasn't much time to reply to that question. So I kind of wanted to amplify it out here and to wonder if other people have some thoughts about, I guess, kind of personally de-escalating, maybe how to take things less personally ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm posing that question.
That's a great question. Thoughts on that?
I've been asking that question ever since the last election. And I found a couple of resources I'll just share quickly. Braver Angels has been helpful to me. I actually trained with them as a facilitator and brought them to my community to get together Reds 8 reds and 8 blues to have conversation, powerful conversation, but a facilitated conversation. And I've seen reds and blues become friends because they had that opportunity to have a facilitated conversation. So Braver Angels is one organization. Also, Marshall Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication, is helping me as an individual to not have those kind of reactions as much. So I'll just throw those 2 resources out there.
Yeah. Other personal thoughts on that? I think that is an interesting question, because we can get very emotional at times about things.
Yeah, there is a lovely practice, but it looks a bit like a result to be achieved. It's from Benjamin Zender, an American conductor and author of a great book called The Art of Possibility, actually stepping into that universe of possibility a little bit also by saying it's all invented anyway. So my beliefs and the belief of the other, and that's actually also what you were saying before, David, they're all invented anyway. So it's not that I am better or the other is right or whatever they have learned or heard before. We've all invented this anyway, and we can at each time also invent a new reality and just give the other credit. Maybe he has seen something or heard something that makes it valuable to him to think Trump will fix that or is better than Joe Biden, whatever. I'm not want to talk politics here, but
yeah.
The basic point is this: it's all invented. And maybe find a thing to make the other person, if you feel like, oh, that's a Trump supporter, if you feel awkward about it, just invent a new thing for yourself, why that might be, and be happy again.
Be happy.
And actually write it down. So I think that's a good thing. Change that story. Write your story down and then rewrite it and try to live according to what you were trying to change your vision on.
Okay, yeah. Other thoughts?
I'll jump in, and thank you for bringing that Art of Possibility back up. That's an amazing, beautiful book, and those stories, it really does invite you into a different way of perspective. So I'm going to pull my book and recording off the shelf and look back at that. So thank you for that. One of the things we talked about in the 2 breakouts I was in was listening. And that when we talk about what is contributing to increasing polarization is the not listening, or the poor listening, or the lack of skills of listening, or an unwillingness to listen because it may put you at risk of change that you're not willing to make. Listening, because then you have to deal with the experience of another and really actually take that in. So listening was one of the things that we talked about, and that is, affecting, potentially this increasing, polarization.
The other thing that I've experienced is, and this is taught, I think, in nonviolent communication, although I haven't taken a formal course, that if we can start looking at what needs we have, that even if somebody's pro-Trump or anti-Trump in the United States, for instance, where I'm from, can we dig beneath that, beneath their beliefs about it, and instead look at what needs are trying to be met? What needs am I trying to meet if I'm anti-Trump? What needs is my counterpart trying to meet if they're pro-Trump? And that oftentimes I'm pleasantly surprised how we are both trying to satisfy the same needs. That doesn't mean it's always easy to keep the conversation there without elevating it up to, and this is why I think this person can better meet my needs. But at least at a human level, that connection around we are trying to satisfy the same needs for safety and security and all those human needs.
Just going about it in different ways.
Yeah.
That can be tough, but I think it's a big part of it, and it's something I talk about in the second half, is about recognizing that most people are acting in good faith. Not all, but most are, and most want to see a better world. They've just got different views, different values as to the best way to go about it. Other thoughts? Taylor, come on in.
regarding the Better Angels, and I'm glad that Kate said she had such a good experience. I had signed up to become a facilitator and then said I didn't want to do something where people were identified as red and blue. That was actually disturbing to me. And I wonder, and this is just a provocative question, but in America, there were so many of these Better Angels and reaching across the table and setting the table and dinner parties and so many things in response to the 2016 election. And they didn't do any good. We're more divided. And I'm wondering if there's actually pushback to that now. If people are deciding to double down and say, heck, none of that stuff worked. I'm doubling down into my tribe now.
I just saw a thing on Facebook where there are people who are promoting that you go back and you find the people that you blocked and you not only unblock them, but that you apologize for blocking them, which I thought was crazy, to be honest. And I shouldn't say crazy. I thought it was outrageous. I thought it was a ridiculous request.
There was a Dutch, I think she was Dutch or maybe Belgian, MP who was of Turkish descent a few years ago. There's a TED talk given by her. And she was getting a lot of many trolls saying very, very nasty things to her through the internet. And somebody suggested this to her, and she plucked up courage, picked up the phoned, because she'd kept a record of all the trolls, picked up the phone, phoned the worst troll, the one who trolled her the most, and said, could I come around to your house? This was brave. And have a cup of tea with you and have a conversation. And she did that with a lot of the people who had been trolling her. And the looks of it, they had some fascinating conversations. They didn't go away having agreed, but they did have some civil conversations. So it's an interesting approach.
Barbara had raised her hand.
Barbara.
Thank you. Yeah. I think quite well, I think very strongly life has helped me develop this approach. The only person whose behavior I can be responsible for or change or control is me. So once I find myself getting really worked up by whatever it is, a political, a health, a family, a network, whatever scenario, I have begun to go, hang on, key question. So what really matters to me, to sort of step back and go, okay, does this mean that maybe I'm a bit knackered at the moment, so I'm getting drawn into something that really doesn't matter at all? Let them go away and let off steam, and I can ignore it all. And I think that question to work out, to recognize when I'm getting wound up by whatever it is. It could be political, it could be a media debate, it could be a family thing, it could be a work thing or whatever, to go, if I'm getting like that, then I'm the one I need to look at first. So does this mean I'm tired? What really matters to me? And a really key question I've used, and I've used it again about 10 days ago, and has totally stepped back from a load of stuff over 10 days. I asked the question, is doing this or going there or being involved with whatever a good use of my energy? And if the answer's no, I politely give my apologies, step away, and I've been out in the fresh air. I've just been able to restart swimming again in the UK, well, in Wales. Wales is behind England in terms of stuff like that. Make sure I go and have a swim, get out in the fresh air, and lo and behold, what happens is I can properly think, and the next step or two on different big projects comes clear. I implement that. So it's those key things. First of all, I'm the only one who can control my behavior and my responses. So key question is what really matters to me, and is being involved in this, that, or the other a really good use of my energy. Yeah. And if I go through those 3 things, it brings me back to being calm, much more centered, able to think carefully, converse with people kindly, respectfully, even if I might challenge their beliefs and the content of their discussion. But we won't fall out. We won't have a nasty argument over it. But we'll have a really good debate. Yeah. So I'll throw that in. You know, my view is step back from it.
Yeah. Let's stop there. I think that's a good point. Good point to step back from things. It's just sort of 1:15 here in the UK. I think it's only in India that it's not 1:15. Let's just take 15 minutes for a short break. So if you're on UK time, it'll be 3:30. I'll let you do the adjustment, but 15 minutes time on the half hour. Let's come back. We're going to the second session. I've got a little bit more to say, and then we've got a lot more time for conversation. Everyone happy with that? Everyone can still hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Good. Excellent. So see you. If you want to stay here and chat amongst yourselves, that's fine. If you want to go and have a coffee, have a swim, then see you back in 15 minutes. So bye for now.
Is everybody leaving or is somebody staying?
I might stay.
Okay, because I think if I leave, then it's maybe not going to be 15 minutes. It's going to be, I'm going to start something else and I'll get caught up. But Lucy, where are you joining from? You're Indiana, is he?
Indiana in the U.S. Who else is still? There are a few people staying, it looks like.
I'll come back, Obi.
I need to get a coffee. I'll be back.
Okay, bye, Jill.
So yes, and apologies that I had to join late. I was having another slightly polarized conversation with a colleague, but
I noticed in the last breakout room, Obi, you were with 2 good friends of mine. You were with Jan, and you
yes.
were Alan.
Yeah, so Jan was our agent provocateur because we had kind of had the discussion already that he joined, but it was fine.
Yeah, good.
So yeah, but I think we started the question actually. We went back to first principles with your question, which is it true that we are more polarized than we used to be?
It's a good question. It's and how might you measure it? We're probably far more aware of the polarization.
Yes.
In social media and connectivity.
Somebody commented in one of my breakout sessions that in Europe people have slaughtered each other for centuries.
Yes. Yep. I was talking to Wim earlier about the Dutch sailing up the River Thames and burning our fleet, which I'm sure we still haven't revenged totally. So did you come to a?
Did we come to a conclusion? No, you finished the breakout rooms before we had. I think Helen can confirm. Did we conclude about whether? Because we definitely didn't answer your question about why we were becoming more.
No. I actually thought, David, and put this into the conversation. It's not why are we becoming more polarized. It's why are we polarized?
Why are we polarized?
And we had Jill in our group. It was absolutely fascinating because she told us about her work. She's a psychologist, I think, and she works with people who are coming out of cults. And so we were talking about people who mainly people, not people who have gone into cults, but people who were raised in cults and so therefore conditioned in very dogmatic, polarized, groups, communities, belief systems. Yeah, so we were listening to her speak about that, and I was starting to wonder, if you have people who are at that extreme of being conditioned to hold certain beliefs, how does that explain everyone else? We started talking about Trump and Obi's friend in his Facebook group, who we discovered was a Trump supporter. It's sort of like, what is it that goes on in people's heads that causes this polarization? That's the interesting thing to really get at.
Yeah.
For me.
A long time ago, there was a thing which I went on a 3-day course, and I ended up sort of, one of the things they were talking about on that was about this, we seem to be all, what they called, it was an American course, so they were talking about already always listening. And essentially what they were saying is that we have certain perception, certain, we go through life picking up baggage, different bits of baggage along the way, which affect our belief systems, and from whenever we are small. And so the example that they gave in that session was that somebody who was hadn't talked to their father for I think 12 years or something by that stage, and because they and it turned out that what had happened in his childhood was that he had this impression that his father was not attentive enough at his interest in sports, or didn't seem to feel that whatever he was doing was enough. And yet, beyond having left home at that point, then he had gone on to be a physical instructor, and then the moderator said, "Well, don't you think that even if you haven't spoken to your father for all of this time, what's been driving you to be a great physical instructor has been that you're trying to still prove to your father that you are good at what you're doing." So there are these things which prevent us from saying things, or like the experience that I shared with the lady who was actually very friendly with me in the group, and then I realized that she was a Trump supporter, and then the conversation kind of petered out after that happened, around about 2016. But because perhaps what went on in my mind was that, if she's a Trump supporter, then this whole sequence kind of appeared in my mind about what my life would be like for the next few months, and then I thought, no, thank you, perhaps better not go down that route. But it's interesting, Helen, for you picking me up on that, because I thought that she was in the cult and you thought that I was in a cult. So.
And maybe.
No, can I also just pick up on something else, because I see that Barbara's here. I really liked your comment about.
Can't hear you, Helen.
Helen, you managed.
I wanted to pick up on what Barbara said, because I see you there. I think it was Barbara talking about stepping back and asking, is this really a good use of my energy? Was that you, Barbara?
Barbara. That was Barbara.
Oh yeah, no, because I think that really resonated with me, because when I was growing up, a lot of my beliefs developed because whatever my father believed or said, I was determined to believe and say the opposite and do the opposite, because he was so dogmatic, and he's a Catholic, and we all had to be Catholics, and we all had to believe in God. Everything, you weren't allowed to disagree with him about anything. So I just disagreed with him about everything and caused absolute chaos in the family for a really long time, until I got to the point, I was in my late teens, and I just thought, not as eloquently as Barbara said, but I just thought, this is not a good use of my time. This is not good for anyone. And I really consciously tried to change the relationship so that we could actually have a conversation and not just disagree over everything. So I really liked what you said, Barbara.
Did it work, Ellen?
One thing that might help, and I liked the bit about, you know, what was about the needs, wasn't it? I've forgotten what we said now. What needs are trying to be met? One of my friends, also a former member of a cult like me, same cult actually, she and I thought the same on everything, and I thought this is a wonderful relationship, and then suddenly she was a QAnon follower. Now I wish that now that I had thought then, what needs is she trying to meet with this? So I committed 2 crimes. One was that I didn't think about that. The other that I was listening, all right, but I wasn't listening. I wasn't really hearing what she was saying. I was hearing this this crazy ideas that were coming out of her, and I just thought crazy, instead of, what is she really saying? What can I step into her shoes for a few moments to help me to be more empathic and understand? And that's me coming from a counselling psychologist. I should have known, shouldn't I?
It's different when it's personal, right? You had a friendship with her, right? And so you felt you had a friendship with her, right?
Yeah.
And so it was personal. So when she suddenly became someone that you didn't know,
yeah,
that was a big shock and dramatic. And when you're in that, oh my gosh, that's when you're in that shocked place, I think it's a really hard time to be able to quickly transition into putting all of that aside and just listening, and what is she really saying? Because a piece of your brain is kind of freaked out. It's like, I thought I knew you. What's the matter with this? And you know, that internal chatter, I think for me, I think I need to have a break to be able to kind of, maybe like Barbara says, you just kind of come back and like walk around in nature for a little bit and come back. And then maybe I can be present to it, as long as when I'm out doing whatever my break is, I'm not busy kind of continuing that process of how wrong she is and how traumatized I am because my friend isn't who I thought she was. And that internal chatter thing is something that I'm really trying to pay a lot of attention to right now, and not buying that anymore. You know, trying to dig deeper into the Buddhist part of me that knows that I am not that voice in my head. But I got 59 years of thinking that I was that voice in my head that I'm working through. So.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Now that I've had time to sit and think about it, I've actually reached out to her again on a completely different matter, something that we're both concerned about. And I've actually had a decent conversation with her again. And we're just not touching that area at the moment because I felt it was important to connect with her again first. And then at some point, you know, maybe come back to it. But yeah.
So gradually others are joining, I think.
Yeah, there's just a few more minutes.
Yeah, there's a minute or two. Hopefully people will be back in a few minutes from there.
Coffee, Gina. Have you got coffee?
Yes, plenty. I'm realizing that my computer is about to run out of charge, so I'm
Although
going to
Gina
block
and I are close friends, she lives in San Francisco and I'm in London.
Right.
So
Yeah.
she was over here last year, which was awesome, and she also drank my coffee.
Nonstop. Okay, I'm going to block the video while I turn around on my knees to plug in my computer.
Okay. Okay, people returning. Welcome back. More people returning. Good. How are we doing? Everyone enjoy their break? Welcome back, Amy. Michelle. Jan. Okay. Hey. Thaler, welcome. Hey. You're amazing. You're all back on time pretty much.
We're great people.
Yeah, look at this. Hi, Gary. Hi, Seema. Hey.
Hello, sorry, I'm multitasking.
Okay. It looks like you got your computer back from your
Yeah,
son.
my son's lesson finished, so I'm back into my little study. Yeah.
I thought maybe you've been fighting with him over it.
yeah, yeah, so yeah, it's much better on the computer to see everyone on the gallery.
Yes.
Yeah, the iPad, you can see it, but it's much better like this.
It's not so good on a
Yeah.
phone. Welcome back, Jamie. Let's just give.
No.
Oh, look! Everyone's coming back. Pamela, hey. So we just got Chris is back. Welcome, Chris. So we just got, and then there were two to join us. Just give them a few more seconds. Okay, let's kick off. So yes, an interesting first half. So let me now fire up my PowerPoint again and share with you some thoughts of my own, and then we can have some conversation around that. Make sense? And can you still hear me? We're still good on the sound. Good. Okay. Right. Let's sort out the screen share here. Where are we? There we go. Share. Oh, okay. Somehow I'm back at the beginning. Let's find the start here. Okay. So we've managed to break that. There we go. Okay. Right. Let's see what I've got for you here. So we are not enemies, we are friends. And if you're not familiar with that phrase, you'll get to learn a little bit more in a few minutes. So what's the way forward? I'm not so sure there's one way forward. I'm not so sure that what I've got to say right now is certainly the only way, if at all. But it's hopefully it's some food for thought, because it's something I've been giving a lot of thought to this last 6 months or so. My feeling is, that we do need to start to learn to engage in more constructive conversations, especially across divides. It occurred to me this morning that it's not just sort of political divides, even in families. I mean, it's coming out in some of the conversation there during the break, that there are divides, and there is this need for actually what a lot of people are calling impossible conversations. So this isn't my term. A few people use this term, and an impossible conversation is one that does feel futile. Yes, and I guess actually it's not just futile, is it? It's also where you realize that if you're not careful, your emotions are going to come into play, and the conversation is not going to go well. So it's about figuring out how to have these difficult, if not impossible, conversations. So let's take a look at that. For me, I started giving this quite a bit of thought, and my feeling was that there were maybe these seven prerequisites, if you like, to engaging in impossible conversations. Are the things that we need to be prepared to do, things that we need to accept if we can engage in more meaningful conversations. And I just want to take you briefly through those 7 points. So, the first one is, to stop seeing each other as enemies. Not always easy. In fact, this is probably the most difficult of all the points. I guess it's not just enemies, seeing other people as stupid as well. seeing other people as stupid, seeing other people as enemies is you know, the root, or to my mind at least, the root of the problem. And I don't think this gentleman needs too much of an introduction, but this is where the phrase "we are not enemies but friends" comes from, if you're not familiar with it.
Now, after yesterday's election, I've been thinking a lot about this quote from one of my heroes, President Lincoln. I think it is an important message for all of us today, and I'm sure that you want to hear me read Lincoln's speeches in my Austrian accent. Here we go. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart in hearthstone all over this broad land, will yet swell the course of our union when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. Isn't that wonderful? I love this quote. And remember, the campaign is over, the election is over, and we are not enemies. We are neighbors, we are friends, and most importantly, we are all Americans. And we have a lot of work to do to keep America great. So let's do it. And let's do it together.
That was clearly said, I think, just after the last American election. It's also where the term "better angels" comes from, although I think the roots of that term go a little bit deeper. And I know I have something in my book about where that term "better angels" comes from. I think, again, just coming from my first session, is recognizing that our beliefs do really rest on very shaky ground. There's not a lot of rationale behind them. This is a quote from the science fiction author Robert Heinlein. We're not rational creatures, we're rationalizing creatures. So we don't look at the evidence and form our beliefs. We form our beliefs and then we search for the evidence to support them. One of the things I've been doing this last few months, been doing a lot of reading. There's a whole load of fascinating, if not very depressing, psychological research that shows very clearly that's the case. It's something that the psychologists call, what do they call it? Motivated reasoning. And I think we do need to be ready to talk with people whom we disagree. And that's again, not always going to be easy. But let's share with you another little video clip. This woman doesn't need too much of an introduction either. This was the Harvard commencement speech from, what, 7 years ago.
And even though this is the college where Facebook was born, my hope is that you will try to go out and have more face-to-face conversations with people you may disagree with. That you'll have the courage to look them in the eye and hear their point of view, and help make sure that the speed and distance and anonymity of our world doesn't cause us to lose our ability to stand in somebody else's shoes and recognize all that we share as a people. This is imperative for you as an individual and for our success as a nation. There has to be some way that this darkness can be banished with light.
There has to be some way in which this darkness can be banished with light. That's well worth reflecting on again. It's not only that we need to talk, I think we need to talk in good faith. And it's interesting because often people are not too familiar with this term, good faith. And essentially it's, you know, the intent to be sincere, to be open, to be honest in a conversation, regardless of the outcome. And I'm often asked, well, you know, how do you determine if someone's speaking good faith? And of course you can't. it's at the end of the day, it's a judgment call as to whether somebody is speaking in good faith. But for me, it needs to be the default. It's the default attitude that you assume that someone is speaking in good faith, that they mean well, until they've really made it very clear otherwise. So by default, we should assume good faith. Showing respect. Now this is an interesting one, and this was something it took me a little while to get my head around. And it was this, that having respect for someone and showing respect for someone were two entirely different concepts. That having respect was about maybe having a deep admiration for somebody, where showing respect was being, showing due regard for their feelings. So for me, it's possible to show people respect. In fact, I think we need to show people respect, even if we don't respect them as such or their ideas. Sounds a little bit devious, but I know if I chose a politician that I particularly didn't respect, and I had the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with him, I'm pretty sure I would actually show them respect. Now, I spent a lot of time thinking about respect, and one of the things I came across is this Jewish concept of lashon hara. And I've written quite a bit about this in my book. And I love this idea. It's a fascinating concept. I think that goes back in Jewish religious history several thousand years. So lashon hara means something like evil tongue. Yes, it's a Jewish term for derogatory speech about another person. And at that point, you might say, well, so what? I mean, it's considered a serious sin in the Jewish tradition. You might say, so what? We've got laws against libel and slander and what have you. But the thing about lashon hara is that it's a serious sin, even if it is true that you shouldn't speak derogatory about somebody, even if it's true. And from the little I've read and some of the videos I've watched, it's a difficult concept because how do you, if you're a reporter, a political reporter, how do you speak about politics? How do you speak about a political opponent and still show them respect, i.e., not say nasty things about them, even when true? So it's a really interesting concept, and I really quite like it because it's almost the gold standard in respect. And what I try to personally do now is whenever I find myself saying something derogatory about somebody, I simply ask the question, do I really need to do this? And most of the time I don't. And I catch myself doing it all the time. And when I do, I curtail it as quickly as I can. I got a feeling I'll never quite get it out of my system, but it's an interesting concept. So it's about showing respect. Now this one's an interesting one as well. I talk about abiding by some rules of engagement, and I've been working with a friend in Toronto, a guy called David Krillman, for the last few months on this topic. And then he started the conversation asking me that if I was going to set some rules to create a psychologically safe environment for people to have a difficult conversation, what would they be? And I basically said, well, let's do that together. And that's what we did. And we came up with something that we've called a conversation covenant. If you don't like that word, you can replace it with something else. But it's simply an agreement between two or more people to abide by a set of rules when engaging in conversation. And it's about creating a psychologically, maybe not safe space, but safer space to have difficult conversations. And you could use it in the context of a small group coming together to have conversations like we are doing here. Or it could just be a commitment to yourself that you're going to abide by these rules. And it's not just about societal conversations, political conversations. We both thought it could be very useful in our personal and business life. Now, I'm not going to go into detail, but we came up with 14, it seems a rather large number of rules, if you will, pledges, as we call them. And some of them, hopefully most of them, will be self-apparent. So this isn't about rules for having a good conversation. There might be a longer list. This is about the things that you need to do to ensure that not ensure, but help ensure that the conversation is taking place in a psychologically safe space, that you're not going to get too upset, too angry, too combative about the conversation. And again, we've written a lot about this, and again, you'll find it in my blog. So we need to have some of these conversations. We do need some rules, or maybe it's just self-discipline. Okay. And last but not least, number 7 is to learn how to have seemingly impossible conversations. And I just recently bought this book. It's How to Have Impossible Conversations by Peter Bakassian and James Lindsay. And I have a little bit of difficulty with the book. If you buy it, you might see what I mean. It's although he's talking about having impossible conversations, it's a little bit combative. And Peter Bakassian in particular is a little bit in your face. I'm not too sure I particularly warm to him, but maybe that's just me. But I've got a little video clip of him here talking about, I think, three ways of improving the way that you go about having conversations across divides. And let's just share those with you before we get into cafe mode again.
2020 is nearly here, and argument season has already arrived. America has never been so connected and divided. People are losing friendships, disowning family members, and it's only going to get worse. I'm Peter Boghossian, and I'm an expert on having impossible conversations. I'm going to share 3 simple techniques you should incorporate to ensure your conversations are productive. Sometimes arguments are presented as black and white, and you get lost in a yes it is, no it isn't spiral. Here's something small you can do to add perspective and have a productive conversation. Introduce scales. Simply ask, on a scale from 1 to 10, how confident are you that belief is true? This lets you know how entrenched someone is in their position. You can also ask for scales on an issue. For example, you may have heard America is a patriarchy and then found the statement bizarre. That comment usually initiates a no it isn't, yes it is argument. You can escape this yes-no dead end by introducing a scale. Ask, how much of a patriarchy? Suppose Saudi Arabia is 9 out of 10 in patriarchy. Where is the US on the same scale? Asking for a scale helps break away from all or nothing thinking. It also gives room for people to move along that scale without giving up their position entirely. And if either position moves toward the other, you know your conversation wasn't meaningless. When we argue, we're asked, often angrily or dismissively, for evidence of our claims. But it's rare to ask, what evidence might actually change your mind? This question isn't a threat, and you're not telling anyone anything. You're just inviting someone to question their own beliefs in a non-threatening way. Here's how you do it. First, state their position in a way that enthusiastically agree. This will ensure you're on the same page. Then ask a disconfirmation question. Ask, how could that belief be wrong? I'm not saying it is wrong, but under what conditions would you change your mind? Now you're in a conversation. Asking the disconfirmation question is a good faith way of giving people the space to consider and self-critique their position. Who knows? You both may find some common ground or learn something. People often confuse the ability to know something with actually knowing something. This phenomenon is known as the unread library effect. In 2001, researchers asked people to rate their confidence about how toilets work. Participants were then asked to explain verbally and give as much detail as possible. Then they rated their confidence again. And you guessed it, this time subjects admitted to being far less confident. We can access the library, but we don't know anything unless we borrow and read the book. It's okay to not know everything, but our confidence should scale with our actual knowledge. Here's how you can use this in conversation. Start by admitting you don't know enough to hold a firm position and ask for explanations in as much detail as possible. You might ask, what do you think? How do you know that? If your partner is an expert, you might both be rewarded with a good lesson. Otherwise, you might both learn that you need to learn more. Improving our conversations is vital because it enables us to solve shared problems. We have some very serious problems that we need to be talking about and generating solutions to, but unless we're having conversations, that's impossible.
So as I said at the start of that little pitch, I have a few reservations about some of the things that Peter Bakassian has to say, but there are some very, to my mind, there's some very good ideas there. The first one, I think, is the best one. That's asking people to put things on a scale to get out of that yes-no confrontation. And so there's quite a bit written on the web, and there were quite a few videos and interviews with him if you're more interested in so-called impossible conversations. So let's just draw to a close here in terms of what I want to say. Just kind of trying to just summarize it with a few bullet points. I think what I was saying, before the break, that as individuals, we know next to nothing. We really know next to nothing, but we still argue and fight out of ignorance. And I think human knowledge is communal, and a big part of this is recognizing this, and recognizing that each and every one of us holds different parts of the jigsaw. We need each other. We're not enemies, we're friends. This is how the human race has evolved and flourished, is because our knowledge has been communal, because we have been able to work together. So let's start trying to have some of these so-called impossible conversations. That's the essence of my message. So, where are we? Second little mini knowledge cafe. So 2 more rounds of conversation, 2 15 minutes in breakout rooms. This is the question I have. So just stepping right back and looking at the whole issue here, how do we cease seeing each other as enemies and start talking with each other? Just practically, how do we do that? Now, I'm well aware that so much of what I've got to say is a little bit theoretical, is a little bit academic. So I'm asking that question, just practically, how do we, psychologically, how do we stop seeing each other as enemies? How do we stop getting angry? So somebody asked a question earlier about how do they stop getting angry when they think about Trump or they meet a Trump supporter? How do we do that? And how do we start having those conversations? I've hopefully given a few ideas of my own there, but I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. Okay, so let's come out of the presentation mode. And jolly good, you're still all there. It's always good. I just get this horrible feeling one of these days I'm going to come out of presentation mode and everyone will have gone. But no. Okay, so once again, everyone happy? Yep. Okay, so let's go for the breakout rooms again. We seem to have lost 1 or 2 more people, but that's all we expected. Let's try the breakout rooms. Okay. Recreate. Let's what have we got here? Just bear with me. That will do there. Okay. Let's look at that. See you all in 15 minutes. Once again, I'll put that question into the broadcast. That's me again.
Just Seema and me at least having quite some experience with carnival, that when you are doing carnival, you dress up and you're out of your normal group you might be attached to, and you look different, and you might not even be recognized by someone who knows you. And that brings us down to a very nice level where you can just see what's alive in you and the other, coming back to nonviolent communication. And from the other group, I'd like to add, very lovely can also be when you get stuck, try to swap language. Although it's already great, we have one common language, we all speak English here, which is pretty amazing, looking back in the past. But if you can also try and swap the language, because then you might start thinking differently and approaching issues in a different way. Doesn't help for all groups, but if you can, it's fun.
Every year I look forward to Notting Hill Carnival, simply for seeing Seema's photos up on Facebook.
Yes, David. Yeah, thank you.
You look absolutely amazing in your costumes.
Yeah, just people coming together and forgetting everything and just having a good time.
What happened this year? Because was it virtual this year in some way? Or?
Yes, it was virtual. Yeah, and I suppose that's going to happen in Trinidad and maybe other cities because of the COVID pandemic. But you know, it's come to the point where it's culturally accepting and creative and fun, and that's one of the reasons I'll celebrate Carnival.
I clearly love it. So that's the idea, is it, that we all dress up for Carnival, and
Not quite the same thing, but in the States, I gathered last week, 2 weeks ago, they had Burning Man. The big Burning Man open thing, and they did it virtually.
They did Burning Man virtually. That's going to be a challenge. Cindy, I think you wanted to come in.
I did. I really like the idea of Carnival, because one of the things that all the groups have got me thinking about is the issue of power in all of this. And one of the things I struggle with is when someone says something that is oppositional to what I believe, I always question whether or not I should respond. And especially social media wise, because, you know, for me, it's like, well, someone has to set the record straight, and then you go, well, hang on. But at the same time, they're perpetuating things that are, you know, and not factual or in bad faith or any of those things. And you wonder, so what is our role in terms of trying to stop that or control it? But the Carnival thing is interesting because it puts everybody, it takes any power away. And I really like that idea, because everybody's on the same level, because you don't know who they are, what they do, what tribe they belong to, any of that, right? So I actually really like that idea. But that's the struggle I'm having. And we've had many conversations at home about whether or not I should be responding to people. Yes.
Jill, just need to unmute. There you go.
Hi. I mean, I've got so many thoughts racing through my head at the moment, but from that last conversation, we would, which was with Jan as well, we were talking about English and how English in different countries is different. So if I'm talking to somebody from New Zealand, they have different beliefs and values than we do in the UK, and therefore some of this comes through the language, and they use words differently as well, and that can sometimes cause problems. But what really struck me was, I think it was Michelle was talking about, see the person as a 5-year-old child, not because you want to diminish the person, but because it helps you to see that actually the other person is not a threat. They're actually a human being, just like I am. And when I find it quite threatening when people come up with beliefs that are very different to mine. Also the other end, I nearly spoke Swiss German then, don't know why. The complete opposite end of the belief spectrum, you know. So, I'm thinking still of this woman who's just joined QAnon, or is following QAnon. And I feel threatened. And earlier someone said something about stepping away and giving yourself time. And that was really helpful, because by doing that, the threat diminished. I began to realize, yes, she disagrees with me, but maybe we can find some common ground to continue the conversation, but maybe with a different slant and maybe not down the rabbit hole. Do you see what I mean? people come across as very threatening when they have different views to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer Garvey Berger actually has some really good questions. I don't know if you're familiar with her from Captivating Leadership. Is that Cultivating Leadership? Sorry, that's the organization she belongs with. And the questions, I have them on my wall, are, you know, what if this person weren't a problem for me to solve, but a key knowledge holder for me to understand? Is the first one. And the other one is, what if this person knows about the situation that could shift or change my mind, and how might I find this? How might I find this out?
Repeat the name.
Yeah.
I've just put it in the chat.
Yeah.
I think,
Thank you.
if that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the lady.
Yeah, and it has, because I have it on my wall, it has stopped me now a few times from looking at it like I need to correct or fix, and it's like, no, I need to learn, step back, and understand where this is coming from, and you know, maybe it'll shift something that I'm thinking or the way I would have responded, right? So yeah.
She's well worth taking a look at. I know I've got several of her short video clips embedded in my book. She's a very insightful lady. Good.
Yeah, you introduced me to her, David, and I really appreciate it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting that threat has come up a lot, and we talked the opposite way around in a couple of the conversations about the trust. So if you don't want to see people as your enemy, you have to see them as in a position of that you trust them. You're not looking at them from the threat point of view. So it's how you get yourself into a position of, okay, what is the end goal, and what are they trying to get to, rather than in a threatening result. You're trying to see that you're trying to get to the same place, or something like that.
I'm reminded of I was with a group of Israeli soldiers and Palestinians who both decided to walk away from their armies, and they met together, and how were they going to work together? And they said that we talked and we realized that the one thing we had in common was that we were both comfortable killing other people.
Oh,
wow.
Oh,
that was enough. And that has completely changed the way that I work, because there's so much discussion about find common ground and find common values. And there's always something that we can agree. It's about safety. It's about security. We all want the same things. And yet that was enough for them to begin the conversation and to start work together.
That's pretty powerful.
That was powerful. Yep.
Yeah, that reminds me of some of the work that I've heard done in prisons, at least in the United States, of some of the connection there is around people have done things that they feel very terrible about. You know, they've hurt people, they've killed people. And I love what you're saying is that it's important for us to perhaps not judge what brings people together, if in fact it's bringing them together to try to get to a better place.
Yeah.
So do you think that we as humans tend to assume that the people we come across are under an obligation to have the same beliefs as us? So why are we so surprised that that people have different beliefs? Why are we so offended that people have different beliefs?
Good question.
I guess it's why we're.
It's a good question, because it's we shouldn't be really, should we? Just
Which brings me to
we are so different.
Yeah.
Amen.
The question, the premise that you are putting as the first rule to have difficult or impossible.
Oh, you're breaking. I'm getting you breaking up, Aman.
Yeah. I think we've temporarily lost a man.
Okay.
That's a shame. I think she's about to say something of interest.
I think she's there still, but maybe.
Just the video frozen. Are you there, Aman?
Yes, she's yes.
You're back.
Yeah, I'm back. I think the internet connection was unstable for a bit.
Yep.
So that was my first doubt about challenging your first principle, David.
Okay.
No need to be enemies, we are friends. Do I have to be friends with everyone?
No.
I could accept that we are different, and that's fine. And I could respect and just not necessarily hate everyone. But at the same time, I don't have to assume that I am friends with everyone. Or do we? That's a continuation to your question, Michelle.
Maybe it calls in what is the definition of friends?
It does indeed.
Or friendship.
I wonder how much of this has to do with the fact that, you know, we humans are mammals, and mammals require living in community with other people in order to survive and thrive. And therefore, when we interact with people out of like a very primal sense of safety, we you know, we assume that they think like us largely because we're here and they're here too. And if they don't, if I think very differently from everyone that's around me, then I'm in danger of being thrown out and being alone and maybe not surviving. I'm not saying, I think your question, Michelle, was provocative and wonderful to consider, but that's kind of what my gut tells me my answer is.
I think you're right, Lisa. You know, we evolved in very small communities, very small tribes, and to go against the wisdom of the tribe, if you like, the beliefs of the tribe, was a very dangerous thing to do. So we learnt not to do it, purely for survival.
Yes, but there's also a time and place where survival means going against the tribe. And there are narcissists and sociopaths in the world. I don't think we need to stay friends with them. I think it is detrimental. And so much of this conversation about communicating and bridging differences is based on the assumption that you're talking with another adult, psychologically healthy, honest people of integrity, which is the majority of people. But there are those who are not. And I think it's important that we can identify who those are, learn to distinguish that, and back out of a potentially detrimental situation. Jill knows what I'm talking about, but that's a whole other conversation, not part of this.
What came up for me was, so we use the terms enemies, friends, and I took it more, not necessarily literally, be my friend. I took it more as a not my enemy, you know, that it's more of a, how do I engage with someone, or how do people engage with each other, you know, in ways where I don't take you to that extreme of enemy. Because I mean, by the time you call somebody your enemy, you have really, like, you're out here on a continuum. And so associating with people is on a continuum, right? And we do have different language and emotion around friend per se. So I kind of took it more loosely that, okay, these are not my enemy kind of frame. And how do you deal with them? I think the last, or one of the last comments that came up about that discussion of finding the one thing in common, but not judging the one thing, was very interesting in that whole chasm of where you see yourself in relationship with people and what level of agreement you might have, you know, with them, and how does that define the way you define even that relationship? Because we certainly have a broader, I mean, you know I do, I have a much broader concept of what things look like with people that I'm friends with. And that's a very small circle of people. And then there's everybody else fits in this range, you know. So I just offer that as thinking about not so much the friend, but as the person, not the enemy. Don't take me all the way to being enemy.
Yeah, I mean,
David, just picking up on that, it just reminded me of an interesting experience that I had. How do you actually have a conversation with someone who immediately identifies you as the enemy? How do you navigate that? I had this very interesting experience in Italy. In fact, I was going to talk about it in the group when I pressed the wrong button, because I live in Italy where, you know, you could say fascism really never went away. And there is something of a resurgence. Now, I was with a friend of mine who is Kenyan and works for one of the UN agencies in Rome, as I do. And we'd just been out having a really nice dinner, and we had just voted, because we're both citizens of Italy. We'd just voted in, I can't remember, maybe it was regional elections. We were picked up by a taxi driver who heard us talking about the election. We were speaking in English, but he understood. And he said, "Why are you so interested in our elections?" And we said, "Because we voted." And he said, and we said, "We're citizens." And he looked at my friend, who's black, and said, "No." Very strongly just said no. And he launched into a tirade that lasted until he dropped her off, and then he dropped me off, about how we were what they call in Italian cosmopolitani, you know, these global citizens of the world. And he clearly saw that as very, very threatening. And I tried to engage a little bit in a conversation with him, because I was genuinely interested in where he was coming from. You know, what were really his beliefs, and why did he see us in that way? But it wasn't possible to engage. And this was all in a very short space of time. By the time we got home, he was dropping me off. I realized if I said the wrong thing, I could possibly have been in physical danger. So I had to be very, very careful of how I navigated that conversation, even though I was actually interested in what he had to say. But he had immediately identified us as the enemy, especially because my friend was black.
I'd like to add to what Helen said before people jump on, and add the piece that here in America, there's way too many guns. And we have the head attorney general, the chief of justice for America, now saying that anybody who is protesting against the current administration should be tried for sedition, is an enemy of the state. So people are being branded as enemies. So this is an incredible conversation to be having right now at this point in time. Like, how do we let people know that it's not enemy or friend?
Mm-hmm. I found that statement shocking. Just to know that, I mean, the United States was founded on a protest. I found that completely out of step with the fact that the United States of America was founded by people who protested how they were being treated by their government, and they formed this country with what we supposed were protections about, you know, freedom of speech and things like that. So I found that statement really interesting. In a country founded on protest, that suddenly protest is no longer American.
And David and I are friends now. Look, we healed that divide.
Yeah, I mean, you rebels.
And that's an interesting point when you talk about healing a divide. So just building on what Michelle just said, it may have been founded in protest, but then it was founded in a way that also created inequity, you know, things from the get-go.
Yeah.
And so when we find ourselves fast forwarded, you know, we're still dealing with a base that was built on in a certain way.
Yes.
And there's been protest against that from the get. You know? And now we find ourselves in a place where, and I think this is when we talk about the height of disagreements that we see in the world right now, is that some things have, it's kind of like there was a line that got crossed. And once you cross that line, now it's like, oh my God, we must do something different. Up until then, it was, you know, it was this constant, you know, kind of back and forth, but you could never get it across the line. And we're witnessing to people who have strong beliefs, and they're going to keep it, they're going to do everything they can to push it back on this side of the line to protect whatever it is they want to protect. So it's very interesting watching these dynamics play out, you know, in full color, because when you try to have those conversations without as much public attention as we have right now, it has been harder to facilitate change. You know, I think because it is so big and so bold now, it may be easier to take bold steps to actually move, you know, toward change. It's not going to be easy, but, you know, you can be a little bolder, I think, you know, in how we address some of these differences. And at the same time, the things that we're talking about here is how do we create a certain structure that allows us to do that in a meaningful way that doesn't tip it even more, you know, in these explosive kinds of situations.
David, I think Jan wants to say
I
something.
think so, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
Well, it's actually a continuous thing, and I like a lot listening to all of you. And I cannot summarize all the observations I heard so far, but I heard a lot about threats and polarization and things going on in the world. And I had the impression that, and I heard a lot of feelings also underlying that, like fear, anger, sometimes was even expressed, or sadness. And I get the feeling that they're all linked to quite some very basic human needs we all do share, like belonging, connection. I mean, belonging to a group, or like feeling, yeah, I want to feel American, or I want to feel like I'm, for my nationality or something, belong to a group. But also very important, and maybe even more important now in this time of pandemic, where we're all a bit divided and only virtually meeting, connection, real human connection between people and groups. And maybe most importantly, that's where the fear and threat comes from: safety. I think people have always been striving for safety for them, their family, and their loved ones.
Yeah.
Was somehow trying in a NVC way summarizing what I heard. And last step, I don't have a request to that. Maybe that we need to talk more about these needs for belonging, connection, and safety.
I think we do. Look, we're 5 minutes from the hour, so nominally that's when plan to finish. It probably makes sense to finish there, at least, you know, go on just for a couple more minutes maybe, but not much longer. Anybody sitting there dying to make a point before we do draw to a close? Because I know lots of you have had conversations in the small groups, but several of you have not joined in the larger group.
Well, after talking about enemies and friends, I wouldn't necessarily, I'm dying to make this point, but what I was going to suggest is I mentioned about citizen participation as being one possible option. And I just shared in my group before, but I'll just share it here so that you have it. There's a report which the OECD produced a couple of months ago about innovative citizen participation and new democratic institutions. And they're using a lot of the kind of participatory techniques and are actually looking at doing precisely this type of conversation with randomly selected citizens to consider solutions for global problems like climate change and so on. So, and it's one area where it can offer a way of breaking through this kind of polarization that we all seem to be perceiving, but not quite perhaps understanding where it's all coming from.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you, Abby. Paul Hector, did you want to come in? You had your hand up a moment ago.
Yes, yes, David. So we've talked about tribes, how important these are to our safety, our well-being, our sense of identity and belonging. When we have such big divides between groups, when someone wants to reach out and try to understand better what the challenges are to overcome the challenges between groups, how do we prepare the tribes that we sort of belong to? How do we prepare them for that? Because by stepping out and going to meet the others, the quote unquote others, it can also put you in a sort of precarious position with your own group. So how do you prepare your group for this movement? Thank you.
Interesting question. Anybody any thoughts on that? I'm not too sure I've got any.
I think it's an important point. I don't know how to answer it.
Keeps coming back to conversation, doesn't it? If we're going to understand each other and what we're about and what our motives are.
But what Paul is saying is you're trying to convince a larger group to, maybe one person has realized they want to discuss with the opposition group.
Yeah.
Trying to convince the larger group that they should do that.
That's a good idea.
Is more difficult.
Yeah.
You're going against
your tribe. They're going to kill you more likely than.
Yeah. So how, is it a slow, do you have to influence small groups of stakeholders to influence the others, or do you get the opposition that you're going to talk to, or enemy, whichever way you want to talk to, but do you get to understand them more and have that conversation so that you can bring that information back to your tribe to help them see they're not so different? It's a really interesting question.
Now, just occurred to me that a number of leaders have been assassinated. Who was it? I've forgotten his name now.
I think Sadat.
Sadat in Egypt.
Yes, here in Egypt.
And one of the Israeli premiers was assassinated too. So it's a dangerous thing to do. Yeah. So you've got to have, yeah. Okay. Interesting place to draw to a close. Final thoughts or comments on this, or the format of the cafe. Again, anybody sitting on anything that they really feel compelled to share before we?
Just a logistics question, David. Will we get a copy of either the slides or the recording of the call?
What I would do, when it comes to the recording, I've recorded just these main sessions. I can't actually record the breakout groups. That's
right.
So I've got the recording, I've got the slides, and there's also, it also captures the chat. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, I will put all those together. By the time I do it, it'll be Monday or Tuesday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Get that out to you. This final conversation, I think, has been a particularly interesting one, and lots of interesting comments coming up. And I don't usually play these back, but I certainly want to play this one back and pick up on so many points. So I'll share all that with you.
You can also save the chat as well, so you can personally save the chat to get all the links.
Yes, you can actually. Can't remember how you do that now. I think
just at the bottom. Click on the three dots in the chat, and then there's save chat.
So if you want to save that now, you can do that now. But it should be saved centrally, and I can share that with you. Okay, so let's draw to a close. How are we doing? We're actually 1 minute past the hour, so I managed pretty well to keep to time. I really hope you enjoyed this. This has been, for me, one of the more interesting sessions. Although, as Obi and some of you and Jan and a few others and Bela, know, and Helen, there's quite a few of you that have been here before. You know how, I don't know, just how powerful these conversations can be, and just how much learning can be in them. So I've hugely enjoyed this one. So a great big thank you to you all. If you've got any questions, if you've got any thoughts, these days this sort of thing just takes over my mind. It's these issues and problems are going to be on my mind for the rest of my days, and maybe I can just help leave the world in a slightly better place. But
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows?
That's all we can do.
I'm going to do it anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is my first Knowledge Cafe. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay, excellent.
Thank
Good.
you.
Have a great weekend. Have a wonderful time. And yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye.
Arrivederci.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Arrivederci.
Bye.